All right. I'm waiting for our guests to come on. And we're having Steve Taylor from the Veterans Franchise Council and possibly Roy Jones Jr. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this. The waiting for them to come on. We'll give a few minutes. Come on. Just means I got to edit this first part out when we go, when I edit this thing. All right. Now, I'm really excited about having Steve on. Steve founded the, here we go.
How you doing?
All right, man. I was just going to tell everybody how excited I was to have you on.
My background sucks. Excuse my French, but let me see if I can improve that at all. No, that's not. Anyways, I'm gonna change the background. That doesn't. Nah. How's that?
That's all right. Looks like you're standing in your backyard. That's funny.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So a couple things that I'm excited about having you on for. One of the things that I talk about a lot is the synergistic business strategy. Okay, so that's where you use the same knowledge base for multiple businesses to create those multiple streams of income. So when in what I do, time's your greatest asset. Okay, it's easy for me to show a 22-year-old who just graduated automotive repair, trade school, and how he can put away. He's making 60 grand a year. He's got his own place. He's got his own car. He's got food in the refrigerator, right? And he can sock away $650 a month. And by the time he's 57, he's got enough money in a policy that he could draw a tax advantage income stream the rest of his life. He wouldn't have to work again. He can do whatever he wants, right? And then I can, but when you're older, you don't have the time. And so now your greatest assets is what you know, okay, and what you can do. And so taking that, I work for a guy who was a retired Army Ranger. Roy's coming on. The Army Ranger Colonel, Vietnam vet, had a PhD, and he had like 6 companies that all supported the produce industry. And I was his representative in the Rio Grande Valley. And that's where I got to see firsthand how he was doing it. He knew about this industry, and he had cleaners, degreasers, and sanitizers to sell to the warehouses to fight the pathogens. The main one was listeria. Listeria comes from the dirt. When you put the wooden pallet on the field and you load up your melons or whatever, squash or whatever, and then you put it in the truck, if there's listeria in the dirt, it'll get transported by that wooden pallet, gets set on the warehouse floor, which is made of cement, which is just hard dirt, and then that pathogen gets in the warehouse. And if you don't deal with it soon enough, it'll take over that warehouse, and you're gonna burn that place down. Okay, so he had the cleaners, degreasers, and sanitizers to deal with that. He had consulting services, so these warehouse managers and food safety managers could pass their Primus inspection, so they could stay in business. They consulted. They partnered with Primus to do these inspections. They had, he had a partnership with the scientist that came up with the PCR system for NASA. So they would put they would set them up with their own laboratory so they could do their testing right there. So they could get their produce out the doors. They have it sitting on the floor for 3 or 4 days. And, I got to see it firsthand how this guy was doing it, right? So it can work for all kinds of things. And the Quick Mount Heroes Initiative with the, mounting the flat screens in businesses and homes. So, when you first told me about this, and I'm like, you're waiving the franchise fee for veterans to do this, I started doing a business plan for it. If somebody mounted like 4 flat screens a day, 5 days a week, he's taking home $7,500 a month. And then with that same and I had a electrician in Arkansas who was referred to me by another Navy SEAL buddy because he was a hard charger that was doing this. And I turned him on to LED City out of Dallas. I was their estimator. And they had this digital signage or digital video wall technology, the LED screens. And one 10 by 20 flat screen in a sports bar or a church, one a month doubles their income. Okay. So now I'm like, okay, it's really hard for me to help people find money to start investing toward their future, and get them to stop spending money where they're spending. And I've done it many times, getting their budget, what's coming and what's going out, looking at where the drain is, whether they're eating out too much or, what benefit do they get, right? Some people just want to do it for the social interaction, but what's the quality of the encounter you have from the guy behind the counter or the waitress serving your meal? It'd be better for you to just buy your own groceries, invite your friends over and watch the fights, right? But when I can show them, and I can do it with the hairstylist, get them to be certified as a master wig maker, then this health insurance companies will actually send them clients who have alopecia or gone through chemo and radiation, and the insurance companies pay for these prosthetic hair pieces. And, it's like $800 each time on the low end, right? And it's, so these are little hacks you can do to increase that income. So Roy's got this, looking at, he's doing this initiative where they're rescuing, taking the proceeds from boxing promotions and funding the rescue of trafficked women and children. Okay. But I'm looking at also for fighters, for boxers, that we can promote them, getting them basically public relations management for them, getting them out there, getting them, some exposure. So now they're worth more money. But what else can they do? All right. That side gig that may end up being their main gig once they retire from boxing. And so you've got a whole bunch of options, and I'd like you to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, let me just take a step back, level set. One of the things I cannot do is make any financial or revenue claims, earnings, that sort of thing. So I do not do that. Um, uh, what I do professionally is I'm what's called a franchise consultant or a franchise broker. So what I do in that role is I educate people on different opportunities, put them in a position to really dive down deep into individual opportunities. So I look at a lot of businesses, and I'm actually invested in this one quick mount TV. Now there are other opportunities I represent that may be just as good or better for an individual, but this one quick mount TV, we did start something called the Heroes Initiative, where we are waiving the franchise fee for veterans, and that's $49,500, $49,500. So we're waiving it off the bat, and what we're finding is really good results. And what does that mean from a practical standpoint? So first off, to get in this business, I mean, technically, it's going to be somewhere between 7,090 and 42,000 for a veteran, something in that range. Frankly, if you're smart, it's much closer to that 7,000 than it is to that $42,000 amount, and that's to get up and going, right? And what do? We install TVs, like you said, in homes and businesses. How does that work? So we just signed a couple very large deals with companies that install TVs for Best Buy. So that's super exciting, because all of a sudden, instead of spending a large proportion of revenue on marketing, it's become more of a customer fulfillment piece. And whereas it may not be in whole numbers as profitable as doing individual jobs, I'll tell you what, it's profitable. And guess what? Best Buy sells a lot of TVs. And guess what? We can't meet close. I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm guessing we're meeting less than 1% of the demand that Best Buy has for installing TVs. So where's the opportunity in this specifically? It's looking for owner operators, veterans. Obviously, we're incentivizing veteran ownership, and I would definitely say we've got a lot of happy franchisees, because suddenly they went from working for someone else making $25 or $30 to where they're doing substantially better than that. So that's what this opportunity is about. Now, are there others? I mean, the sky's the limit. And what I do, again, just kind of level setting, Ruben. I work with my clients to determine what the best opportunities are for them. There are other companies. I mean, I'll just give you, to speak more directly to what you're saying about layering businesses. There are businesses I work with. Let's say they own 5 home service businesses, a painting franchise, I don't know, exterior cleaning franchise, a flooring franchise. They have maybe 5 or 6 different businesses, but they have a common operating system. So let's say you start out and you build a team that does painting, and you're okay. That's cool. Well, guess what? You expand to a certain point. Let's say you live in the Northeast and the painting season is 3 to 6 months long. What do you do with those employees the other 6 months, right? I mean, do you lay them off and then maybe get them the next season, or maybe not? Or do you add a business like a holiday light hanging business, or a I don't know, interior painting business? Maybe you start with an exterior and you go to an interior. So these are these are the type opportunities I represent, where again, you layer on the business, it becomes less seasonal, for example, or maybe less cyclical. Maybe it's a business that does very well in when times are good, when people are investing in exterior lighting, let's say. But when times are less good, maybe they paint, or they do other maintenance work that's more in demand during downtime. So I'm not trying to filibuster you, but I just want to give you an overall perspective.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Okay, so I'm part of the Christian Entrepreneur Club, and then we do these mastermind Zoom meetings, right? And I see people, from different. They'll have people from all kinds of different automotive repair. They'll have landscaping guys. They'll have handymen, right? A lot of authors, people writing children's books or whatever, right? And I'm trying to I'm listening and seeing like that one of the handyman guys also does sheet metal, and so he has relationships with HVAC people. Okay, and I know how that works because my son does that in San Diego, and in the summertime he makes stupid money, but in the wintertime it slows down a lot. So he was actually the first one that called, that wanted me to set him up with called, an infinite banking strategy. So I got him an index universal life, and his target premium was like $168 a month, but he can max fund it to like $1,066 a month. So when he's making a lot of money, he can sock it in there. But in the wintertime, when things slow down, he can take a policy loan from it to get through the month if he had to, right? Or to start to do something else with. A lot of people have done that. I first learned about that on a podcast when I was learning about this stuff. This veteran, he was a Navy reserve officer who used his VA loan to buy a house. And he used this strategy. He got a whole life policy, and he basically passed his debt service, his mortgage payment through the policy, overfunded the premium, borrowed it back out, paid his mortgage on time. And in less than 10 years, he had enough in the policy to completely cover the balance of the mortgage. So he borrows it out of that and pays off his mortgage. And in only whole life will actually give you that guaranteed rate, whether, it's like 5.125%, kind of on the average on the borrowed money. But when he pays it back, he gets the dividend. So these mutual companies, so they treat their policy owners like shareholders, and they pay out a dividend if they do well, right? And they all are doing well right now. And so he could make up close to 12%. Well, this guy goes and buys borrows from the equity out of his house, 3 fitness franchises. And he set up whole life doing the same strategy with the businesses now, right? And paying off the business debt and the businesses. And so there's all kinds of things that you can do. And I'll sit down with somebody. A lot of times, they're just not maximizing their potential. They're not seeing. Give me an example. There's a program with the church where these ex-felons that are, they just wanted to get a job making $15 an hour. Okay. and they're just struggling doing that. Or tunnels to towers here in Houston. It's a transitional housing facility for veterans. Okay. And you got a bunch of homeless veterans living, and they're just happy they got a warm place to sleep and food to eat while they're working on making their disability upgraded so they can, play video games all day. Drives the employment lady crazy there because they're just not motivated, right? Well, they're not motivated because nobody's showing them, start off with that $15 an hour gig, go to trade school, all right, for HVAC or automotive repair or welding, right? And then I can show you how to step that up. Here in Houston, they've got one of 3 underwater welding schools in the country. One's in Washington State, other one's in Rhode Island, and they teach them. They get them Part 107 license so they can fly a drone or pilot one of the underwater autonomous vehicles. Okay. And so they can get a contract for, pipeline or water tower maintenance, break out their drone, fly that. They're going to get paid for the drone, find the damage, find the leak, break out their cut and torch and welder and fix it. So they're increasing their money. Got this young kid, 22 years old. He's making 60 grand a year, got his apartment, got his car, got food in the refrigerator. I call him up. He's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you called. I paid off all my expenses, and I got about $1,000 left over. I was going to get another tattoo." but and then we started talking about this, and he was thinking about getting certified as a welder. Now he can work, be a mechanic for a logistics company and fixing the engines on their semi tractor trailers and adding whatever they need to add, welding whatever they need to weld, repairing the trailers or whatever, right? So there's all kinds of things that people can do to increase their cash flow using the same knowledge base, the same effort that they're doing right now. A lot of people they think, "Oh no, it's gonna be too hard to make that kind of money." But I found out it's just as hard to make a little bit of money as it is to make a lot of money. You just got to be in the right lane. So, so once I do that for them, then I can show them how, taking that extra income and putting it away, that, where that'll take them. I got a perfect, is there anything coming to mind with what I'm telling you here?
Oh yeah, I can. I'm just thinking. So I work primarily with veterans, and by primarily I mean 99%. And one of the hardest things I have to overcome with the veterans is a lot of them think they don't have any business experience, right? And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I know the hardest business lessons to learn are not technical, and it's about surrounding yourself with good people, right? That give you good advice. But a veteran comes into it with all the raw materials, all the raw skills. Primarily, let me again step back. I mean, the typical veteran leaves the service, and knowing or unknowingly, they have a huge amount of skills they can apply to any situation. And what you're talking about, vocational, what I'm talking about are those soft skills, those, if, and you can apply them in ways that you may not even realize. And
well, jump in here. One big one is qualifying, right? I mean, when you've gone through buds and you get a 70 to 80% attrition, right? You get a pretty good ear and eye for understanding the guy you're talking to, whether that guy's going to make it or not, right? Yeah, and so that transitioned directly to what I do now with sales and financial services. So
Yeah.
I'm getting what.
Yeah. Well, I was, I probably, you're a prime example. I mean, you were a Navy SEAL, that's very impressive and all that. But what vocational skills did you learn as a Navy SEAL that you can apply? I would say it's roughly zero. Okay, so you can run and shoot straight and eat snakes or whatever you guys do, right? That applies virtually zero, right? But what about mission focus? What's the old saying? No plan survives first contact, right? And that's business 101 right there. You can have the best business plan in the world, but if you're not willing to constantly evaluate, remembering what your in goal is and adjust as necessary, it's a worthless business plan. Because you're not, no business plan survives the first customer, I guess is the analogy. But yeah, I mean those are the things I talk to my clients about all the time. And again, having a financial plan is such an important part because you know what, you brought up quick mount TV, right? I mean, it's a great business. um I may have mentioned this before, but your listeners haven't heard this. I got involved in it because I thought it was a perfect business for you know former enlisted fellas, and gals, E4s, E5s, E6s. Maybe they had one or two enlistments, not a lot of money, that sort of thing, right? Well, the first five franchisees were on average 05.5s. Okay, so somewhere between a Navy commander, Marine lieutenant colonel, and Marine colonel, Navy captain. Okay, on average, right? And these guys are doing well, and they're happier than I am trying to think of a family friendly of saying they're very, very excited because they're doing something real. They're building a team. They're installing TVs. All of them started by installing TVs themselves because they wanted to learn how to do it, that sort of thing. And they're making money. They're profitable. So that's a long way of saying that's the first piece. Get that first one in, get that first company, that first business. Don't be intimidated by it. Again, and being willing to apply the skills and training and habits that you learned, you practiced, and were enforced in the military specifically.
So
Not,
what you're saying, I'm gonna take what you're saying, kind of segue to the next step. But
yeah,
so I went to college. I was thinking I was going to be a STEM teacher because I had come from the drone business,
yeah,
right? I had a real challenge with college algebra, right? And I took this class. I failed it the first. I took college algebra, failed it the first time, so I signed up for it again. But it was a two-part class. It was the first half was contemporary mathematics, and then you went into college algebra, right? And I didn't know what contemporary mathematics was. I had no idea, right? When I get there, and it was all, they said logic and reasoning. That still didn't mean anything to me. But when I got there, it was just figuring the averages of stuff, which when I was a free fall jump master, I'd have to get up at like 4:00 in the morning, call the tower, get the winds, every 1,000 feet up to 12,500 feet, break them up for the first 8,000, for figuring the drift under canopy and averaging the winds and all that. And then the free fall drift up to the, so I could tell where the spot was, right? Well, when I got into the mortgage and real estate business, I was figuring debt to income ratios and loan to values and all that. It was the same thing. It was the same thing. I smoked that class, right? Because I was just doing what I had been doing for years, not knowing that there was really any value in it. Am I making sense?
Oh my gosh. Let me just tell you, I've got a very similar story. So my degree is in oceanography. Okay, what the heck does that have to do with anything? Well, I was an account manager for a very, very large consumer electronics company. I was selling into very, very large retail company that rhymes with, I don't know, Paul Part, and had 4,500 locations. Each one of them required individual forecasts, right? And I applied some of the education I got in college to retail forecasting. And the kind of the kicker is I'd stand up and do presentations, and I would start off, because I think I'm a funny guy. I think, Ruben, if you knew me better, you'd understand how truly funny I am. And my wife really doesn't understand humor, but I would stand up in front of all these executives and I say, well, I don't like to brag about this, but I do have a degree in oceanography, and oceanography tells me, and I get a big laugh out of that. And then go through, and the joke was on them because it was directly lifted out of the statistical analysis I did as an oceanographer. So yeah, so that resonates, and you can apply that in so many different directions. Education isn't college class or a high school class or anything like that. Education is taking life's lessons and being able to apply them wherever they are. And I would argue, I mean, every single person, if you get to know them, has a similar story, whatever it is.
So running that department, running air operations, right? SEALs are small units. We don't have enough guys to fill a C-130, right? So I would have to call special boat unit and get their guys that needed, jump pay. Had to call the guys that were, the Army Special Forces guys. Hey, you guys want to get in a jump, right? And then I could fill the bird, right? But that, and then coordinating the drop zone crew and the boats in the water, because we're in Panama, right? And all of those things, it was training me to be an entrepreneur, training me for business. Those skills, those processes, learning. Oh, this happens to me all the time. I got to hear somebody tell me how great they are before we get down to what we got to do to get them what they're looking for. Yeah, which was in the military, you didn't have to do that because you had rank, right?
Yeah.
It did it for you, right? Right. But not in the civilian world. In the civilian world, you got to have somebody, they got to promote themselves first. But that being secure with who I am, right, lets me endure that. So then we can get to the point where we can start doing some business, right? And then all of that leads to, once you've got that going, now you can get going. Now you can look at things and solve the problem, and hopefully your solution is what pays your bills.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
well, and I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent and promoting veterans business ownership, but you had a good point there. Is I think one of the skills most of us left the service with was sense of humility, but also a sense of self, right? And I work, like I said, I work primarily with veterans, and that's what I like about it, right? I don't, we're by and large very secure um, in who we are and in what we bring to the table. We're secure enough to hear different opinions and process them, and and I think it's very important that both our clients, yours and mine, are interested in learning maybe an alternative way of doing things, and that's a huge skill. That's a I was going to make a joke about the what was it, the pin you guys wear, it's cut off a Budweiser can or something.
The Trident.
The Trident.
The Navy.
Is that Coors or Budweiser? I can never remember, but
Budweiser. Call it Budweiser. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I knew it was something like that. But you're secure in what that means, right? You're secure
So
what that represents, and you're not going to get pissed off at me, right? You're not going to show up at my doorstep with a big K-bar or something.
In Little Creek, right? Guess who's in Little Creek besides the Navy SEALs? The Navy band.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you got
right?
the amphibious Navy there too, right?
Right. So they would go, guys would like, people would see him wearing that Trident and they go, what is that? And they say, oh, we're in the band. Yeah. They would tell them they were in the Navy band, right?
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
That's hilarious, right? But it's like, that shows that they're like, you know what, this isn't what's really important. You being all impressed with me is not as important as what I'm going to do for you. Okay. Now with that said, I have a guy right now, and I want to, his situation. He had started a business where he has these acoustic sensors that can detect the cracks in fuel cells. And his primary clients were like chemical companies. Okay. Well, SpaceX had a rocket blow up on their launch pad because of a cracked fuel cell, and they called him. So he went from 2022 making $58,000 a year to 2023 making 1.4 million, 1.3 million, and 2024 making like 1.4 million. And then the company, when Trump started talking about the tariffs, the German company that he bought his sensors from made him their U.S. partner to get around the tariffs. So what they would, it's all about, what's manufactured in the U.S. So they, instead of sending him the sensor in one piece, they sent it in two pieces, the mechanism and the cap, snaps it together. Now it's a U.S. manufactured product. Now he's making $2.5 million a year. This, in 2025 and in 2026, he's probably going to make, he's busier than a one-arm paper hanger because he's getting all this business coming at him. But he's got a stupid tax bill now, right? And so I'm showing him he can max fund his qualified plans, meaning he qualifies for a tax deduction on the contribution up to $460,000 a year. He'll save $170,000 a year in taxes. But at age 73, if he does that for 10 years, his mandatory distributions at age 73 are going to be between $350,000 and $417,000 a year, and his tax bill is going to be between $110,000 and $150,000 at age 73. But taking some of that, less than half of that $170,000 in tax savings, we can fund these tax advantaged vehicles. So at age 73, he'll have enough in tax advantage or tax-free income to offset what he's going to have to pay in taxes. Okay. And so I just got done working on that strategy for this guy. Okay. So those are things. And like when he was making $58,000 a year, that wasn't a problem. Right. And even now, unless I pointed it out to him, he didn't have a solution to reduce the taxes now. All right. And he wasn't even thinking about what he would have to do for the taxes at age 73. Who wants to worry about that? Right. Okay. But we solved that problem. So those are the kind of things that I love to do. But, just before this call, I'm getting illustrations from insurance companies for people that have, chronic illness, right? And, but they just they're getting, the wife's pregnant, going to have a baby, right? And they need to take care of, they're looking out for that future, but I got to find a solution for them because I got to find a carrier, whatever. So that's what I do. And I like doing that too, right? I'm into solving problems, solving challenges. And like I said, what you have is something like what, besides the Quick Mount Heroes Initiative, what kind of franchises do you have, with a low threshold, maybe 20 grand for a franchise fee? What kind of thing, what do you have there? What do you have for that?
Initial investment. That's by far the lowest one. I mean, there's a dog training franchise that it's really veteran friendly. I mean, those are the two lowest ones. But a lot of these, like there's a pest management company, really, really big name. I can't mention it on air, but they'll finance a franchise fee, or they'll make it, again, you're looking out of pocket, maybe $20,000, and then they'll finance the rest. And then I mean, all of these, you need a good credit score. So, you can't have a 650 credit score and expect to get financing, right? Maybe you can, but the numbers don't math out.
Yeah, I'm your Huckleberry. That's how I actually got in this whole financial world, man. When I left the teams, my income dropped off significantly, right? And my wife was like, the creditors keep calling. I'm like, well, tell them I'll pay them when I get the money. And she's like, but they don't listen. I'm like, well, tell them to pack sand. Well, she couldn't do it, but I did. Yeah. Well, the guy from Discover Credit Card was a Marine. He was a little tougher than the rest of them. I couldn't just blow him off the phone. And he goes, I think you need to educate yourself on personal finance and debt management. So I did. I read every book you can get your hands on personal finance and debt management, learned about a debt roll-up strategy, and I didn't know how to use Excel, but I had a whiteboard behind my bedroom door with all my debts, the highest debt to the smallest debt. Every time I paid my bills, I'd change the balances. When I paid that first debt off, I took that debt service amount and I added to the payment of the next smallest debt. Everything you pay above and beyond the minimum goes straight to principal, lowering the effective interest rate, paying everything off faster. Long story short, I got myself out of debt in less than 2 years. And then I entered an ad in the paper as a debt management consultant. I wrote more business for that company my first month than anybody else had done for them in a year and a half. And they made me the manager. Every time I showed somebody how to get out of debt, they started looking at buying a house. So I got my real estate license, started doing mortgages and real estate. And if I had a crystal ball, I couldn't have picked a better time to do that when I did. I averaged about $200,000 a year on my own pen for like 6 years in a row, but then it just stopped. But that's when I transitioned over to financial services. But the point is that building on that knowledge, okay, can get you into that higher level. It's not hard for me to show somebody who's an hourly employee to find a way to save 20 grand and get themselves into a better opportunity. And then, do you ever have anybody who has like one franchise that made enough money to buy into another franchise? Has that ever happened?
Yeah. And that was one of my, this was my first example, right? You know, companies like working with successful people, right? And franchisors are no different. If you're doing well, they're gonna help you expand. And this no one ever talks about this, but when you're successful, you'd be I was genuinely surprised the opportunities that came across my desk once I demonstrated I could be successful, right? So, yeah, I mean, there are people every day of the week that talk to me about that, about how can I add to my portfolio? I mean, one guy, I mean, this top of mind, right? He's like, well, I have a saying, one business is no business, and he's got a plan to have 5 businesses, and I think he's been very successful in his life thus far, and I have no doubt he will execute his vision. So yeah, I mean that happens all the time. That's the goal. I would say a lot of people I work with are more interested in expanding their business, like your friend there with the fault detection sonar. I think that's what it was. They want to expand their current business to the point where they achieve a certain level of or standard of living. They can manage their phone calls, they can work remotely, those sort of things.
So have you ever heard the term silver tsunami?
Oh yeah. 10,000 new senior citizens every day, or is it every day? Yeah.
I fell right into that. I was just doing some marketing, and I was looking for some events, and I just saw the community fair at the Awbridge. I'm thinking it's going to be a bunch of families and their kids playing, whatever, and I got there a little early, so I went to lunch, and I see a couple and this older gentleman. I'm thinking this guy's taking his dad to lunch, right? Well, the old guy was deaf, so I could hear the whole conversation. And it was a real estate agent and his wife that had just listed this guy's house. His wife had passed, his kids were grown. He didn't want to deal with the upkeep and the maintenance anymore. He wanted somebody else to take care of that for him, right? And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, I go to the event, all right, and I walk in there. It was a assisted living facility for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. I was the only man in the building, right? All these hospice nurses and in-home care providers, right? And of course, my wife died of cancer, and I had my hospice experience was less than 18 hours. I called them in the morning, and by 10:30 that night, she had passed. Okay, they gave her a fentanyl patch, gave her morphine, and they sent the chaplain. That was my experience with hospice.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out that we could have had them there taking care of her, and I could have been out there working, right, and could have been producing instead of having to take care of her, all the time. And but I found out that the demand is stupid. So the next day, well, that night, I'm at my computer and I'm watching this video. The title rep from Tycor Title, Brian Lipsey in San Diego, California, had a podcast, and they were talking about teaching agents how to get these listings from these seniors and taking advantage of the silver tsunami. Then I go the next day, I go to the Houston Investors and Builders monthly meeting. Okay. And it it was two Asian guys and this girl right out of college with an MBA, nerdy girl that she didn't want to sell. She just wanted to do the bookkeeping part of it. That's what she was looking for a job, right? And the one guy was doing the condo conversions, converting apartments to condos, but nobody was buying the condos. And the other guy, he had five, the team of five investors bought a hotel right in during COVID, and they ended up having to go into foreclosure because nobody was staying at the hotel because of COVID, right? And I'm like, both of you guys, if you convert those condos to senior assisted living facilities, and if you would have taken, and the same thing with the hotel, you'd have never had a vacancy, right? So what opportunities do you have that are taking advantage of that trend right now?
Oh, there are a plethora of opportunities. I've got there are advisory networks. There are, like, for example, a family member calls and, Grandma Smith is, needs in-home care, so, and you go research opportunities for them. There are essentially handyman services that are designed to provide mobility solutions for clientele, and by that I mean they work directly with the VA, for example, providing ramps and that sort of thing for clients. There are others. There care situations where you maintain. I don't want to say stable, but you maintain a group of care providers, and then as the need arises, you assign caregivers. A lot of non-medical stuff, easy licensable. There's one concept that I absolutely love. I put a retired senior chief into that. It's called Seniors Helping Seniors, which is a situation where you hire seniors to help other less mobile seniors do like daily tasks, non-medical stuff, but maybe help people get dressed, maybe help them do light housekeeping or do shopping for them, get them to the doctor, that sort of thing. So I mean, long story short, there are a variety of different type businesses that are designed to service that silver tsunami.
Send me whatever you got to talk about. I literally have she owns a hospice care company here in Houston, and she wants me to come and talk to these retired seniors on things that they can do, right? And I'm like, and you just spoke it, I'm like, oh, that's incredible, right? I mean, what I was planning on talking about just about, using that knowledge base that they have, doing consulting or whatever, right? Because, my dad was a farmer his whole life. And he thought, nobody had ever come to his funeral. That place was standing room only. And it was all these young farmers that he had been teaching all the little tricks that, he'd learned from his dad and his, my great grandpa and all that, right? That he taught these young farmers about everything from, rotating their crops to getting the ewe to take their lamb, because a lot of times the sheep will just not accept their babies, right? And so things like that. And then they're telling me all these things that my dad taught them, right? And so those were the kind of things I was going to talk about. But you got some meat for me to talk about. So send me what you got on that franchise for sure, right? But I love having this call because I'm thinking about the Christian entrepreneurs, and resources for them. I'm thinking about the fighters that are, once they're done fighting. I mean, I only know like 4 fighters that I trained with or fought that actually achieved any level of success after boxing. Roy's one of them. Another one, Derek Gaynor, bought a UPS franchise. I bought a UPS store in Pensacola, Florida, right? And and so these are opportunities. Young fighters like, if I can have a business that's making money while I'm training, that's the kind of business I want to be in. And so I like to, people don't realize it. They're thinking it's like I'm gonna buy myself a job where I'm my own boss. But in these franchises, they can make you money and you don't have to show up every day. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the well, let me take, again, let me take a step back. Yeah, I mean, every single franchise is designed, uh, some more so, some less so. So you're not constantly trading time for money. So by that I mean, if you spend 10 hours, you get $100. If you spend that's what I call trading time for money. And if you spend 100 hours on it, you make $1,000. Every single franchise is designed where you spend 10 hours, you make $100. But if you spend 100 hours, maybe you make $10,000 or $100,000 because you've learned the business and you can start using other people's time to make money. And it's all dependent. I mean, you go from a McDonald's where you've got a general manager on staff and you're going in an hour every month to review numbers. And then there are other businesses like Seniors Helping Seniors, like I was mentioning before. They, you're actively managing a group of seniors and that sort of thing. So it may be a lot more than an hour a month, but you're not spending your time helping other seniors out. Other than putting those people in place. So every business is different. And that's kind of what I work with my clients. One of the things I work with my clients is what are your goals and objectives? Some people want to replace an income almost immediately. Well, that's going to take a whole lot more effort than if you've got a bunch of money and you can hire a general manager from day one. So every business is different.
Well, your timing's perfect. We got about a minute to go. StreamYard breaks this up to like a little shorts. I'll send them to you. You can use them however you'd like. But this is great information. Time flew here. We had Roy on for a minute, I think, because we weren't talking about the child rescue or boxing. I think he got bored and left. But that's all right.
You'd be bored by this. I mean, oceanography stories, jokes about seals. Here, I got one. Let me leave you with this. So you know what SEAL stands for?
Tell me.
Sleep, eat, and lift.
Ah! I've heard that before. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. Got a lot of meat here. Like I said, I'll send you the video and I'll send you the shorts when I get later today. But
I'll link you up with the Seniors Helping Seniors too.
All right, yeah, and get me with your quick mount guy here in Houston.
Okay, yeah, will do.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.